everyone, and welcome back to Conversations with Delpha and Naomi. I'm Delpha,
Naomi.
and we're going to have another conversation. We actually have a topic today. We're going to talk about self-worth. We've gone around and around this topic multiple times, and I'll be super transparent because that's what this podcast is about. We started recording a different podcast. It was sort of on self-worth, but it leaned on the negative side, on lack of self-respect. And it just didn't sound right. It didn't sound authentic. And we stopped and we said, whoa, let's regroup here. This does not sound like us. It sounds like we're totally bashing an article that we didn't like, and that's it. That's not who we are. And so we kind of circled back and said, really, what's the message we want to put out there? And what's been the challenge usually like this last 2 weeks? I can tell you for me, it has been talking with people that keep forgetting that they're worth more than what they're perceiving at the moment. And so I have a friend who I had a conversation with this week. She is going through a lot of work. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of stuff happening. And so as we were talking, she knows me. She knows I'm going to go full coach on it. And so I just stopped her and said, okay, so what are you doing for yourself? We've had this whole conversation about what's going on at work. And and we can totally talk about this too, because there's this whole thing about like in self-worth and really knowing your value is, are you absorbing other people's energy? Therefore, you're absorbing their opinions of you. Or are you standing in your authentic self and really owning who you are? And therefore, those opinions are just their energy and their mentality. And you still anchor on who you are, your values, your strengths, etc. But before we even get to that, I paused her and said, what are you doing for yourself today? She said, well, I took tomorrow off. And I'm like, awesome. What are we doing tomorrow? I'm going to work. I'm not going to tell you what she was doing. I'm going to do work. But she was doing work to push her towards the goals that she has. And I said, okay, stop. Taking the day off and doing work is still work. Still work. It's still not filling your tank up. This is stuff that you want to do, sure. But is it going to fill you up? No. So you're still not putting yourself first. You're still putting the goals and actions and activities first. So take a step back again. What are you going to do for you on your day off? And I think we forget that. I think we take a day off and we go to the dentist, we go to the doctor, we do all these things. We just don't have time to do the things, right? But holy smokes, take a moment, take a breath, and just stop doing. And so I hope she hears this. She is one of our listeners, and I hope she hears this. And I hope that you took a break. I'm going to check in. So what do you think, Naomi?
Oh, I think so many things. You know me. First of all, as you described the situation, the first thing that happened, and I'd love to hear this from listeners, is I totally connected with her, and I was like, oh, I was you. I've done, I've been right there where, thing happened, wanted to take a day off, and my day off was filled with distractions, pretty much, or work. Yeah. So I was like, ooh, yeah, I've been that person for sure.
Yeah.
So it's like step one. Okay, tried it that way. Let me see how that works. And then I sort of pulled away as I was listening to you and was listening to what you're saying from like the top down. And I thought, oh, if I could have a conversation with her, I would love to talk to her about how about if you reframe it and look at it this way, right?
Yes.
One of the people that I follow, because I want to do a shout out, her name is Emma Mumford. She is on YouTube. She has private subscriptions. Emma, love you. All right. Because I'm going to This is Emma's framework. And immediately it came to mind around self-worth. You know, that there's self-care and self-love and then self-worth. So the self-care we do really well. I'm going to get a pedicure, right? I'm worthy, I'm deserving. The self-care is kind of showing myself love with physical things. And I think that as women, we have really stepped into that. And maybe it sounds kind of like shoes. I'm taking a day off. I'm not going in. Self-love. Okay. Self-love number two. It's that, it's the relationship I have with myself. But more than that, it's how I talk to myself. Right. So it's how that I'm using towards myself. So was she taking the day off and saying, oh, like positive words to self or negative words to self?
Well, and pause there for a second. I love that because the self dialogue is a real thing. And I had not, I mean, even for myself, I had not thought about that even on the moments where we're taking a break, what are the things we're telling ourselves? Are we still thinking about the work? Are we still thinking about the issues? Because if we are and we haven't fully disconnected down to our thoughts, we're still working. We're still there and we're still in that energy. Good call. Emma Mumford. Very nice.
Yeah, we can put it in the show notes or her YouTube channel. Yeah, and this is talked about in so many ways, right? Like limiting beliefs and positive affirmations. And it's a step that I think we kind of, I will forget about. So like feelings towards self. I talked to somebody recently who was telling me about something in their business and something didn't go the way they wanted it to. And I have that feeling, I have these great, amazing conversations with potential clients and crickets, right? Boom, I don't hear from them. And immediately, okay, you know what did I do? What did I say? Did I say something? Is my fee too high? Is my fee too low? Is my program too, right? Look at how I'm talking to myself. And so, coach is the coach. So I try to stop myself and just say, I can be disappointed. Yeah. Especially when I feel that connection, like, oh my gosh, the work we could do together is amazing. But I want to catch myself, or I call my coach, right? Coaches need coaches. Coaches usually have coaches, right, Delpha? But how am I talking to myself? What kind of self-love am I giving myself? If I'm still talking about the other person, okay, I can, often I can step back, take a breath, but I need to do something. I need to walk in nature. I need to do a 5-minute meditation because otherwise I'm just pounding on myself. Oh, was there another coach that was better suited or blah, 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 blah? We're just not our people, or this is not the right time, or I don't know. Like, move on. I don't know why. Do I need to know why?
Exactly. And I think we live in a world where we always want to know the why. And sometimes the why doesn't matter because it's not even ours. It's just not ours.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, going back, there's, and then there's self-worth, right? So, I know that when I think about my own self-worth, and believe me, I mean, this is a work in progress. There's not a pinnacle. Oh, I'm there. I know my self-worth. Right? It's always a work in progress. So my red flags are, how am I talking to myself? And what are the boundaries that I'm holding? And not, and I need to do a daily reminder, whether it's an affirmation or I was just working on this yesterday with my coach. And my mantra, okay, I'll share it with the world, 35 people who listen or whatever, is, am I having fun right now? That is my new mantra around that. For me, it's fun. The word fun is what's connected to self-worth. That is totally personal. It's going to be a different word for everybody. And for her and for you, am I right now? Right? Like, then I know my value and I can make.
Oh, I love that. Like, I didn't think of it as a self-worth exercise. But
Mhm.
I say to myself constantly, is this bringing me joy?
Yeah.
Is it bringing me joy? If it's not bringing me joy, I don't want to do it. I
Right.
don't.
And yeah. And of course, there are the things because I hear people saying, like, what are you talking about? Life is life. Not everything is fun or makes you happy. Absolutely. But it's like, am I having fun right now, like with myself in whatever way I need to do this thing? Right. It can be a difficult thing, it can be a bad conversation, but it's still, am I having fun right now? Rather than
Ooh,
my way, am I?
wait, I just had a thought. We talked about this the last time, and I'll relate this back to being the observer.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that part of that self-worth is, ooh, okay, maybe it's not bringing me joy right now, but let me just take a step back and be the observer, where I'm preserving some of my energy. I'm observing the other person and letting them have whatever moment they're having and not letting that affect me.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, it's going to affect me. I'm a human being, right? It's going to affect us, but that's okay, right? I
Okay.
don't want to jump out, react, I want to respond, but absolutely, right? But it's not hanging on to it. It's not having that negative self-talk about it. Um, and negative self-talk about others, like maybe it'll be small, maybe it'll be fleeting, but not hanging on to it is, and
Yeah.
it's about the other person. It's not about me. Absolutely. And if it is about me, what does that tell me about me? And don't make a big deal. I don't want
How,
to feel about it.
how do you know, or how do you make the decision that it is about you? Because there's so many, I'm just totally jaded on this, right? So there's so many
Mm,
people out there that never think it's about them.
absolutely. Right. Right. Well, they're not self-reflecting.
Oh, well, that's easy. Okay. Thanks for that. Self-reflect, people.
Yeah.
Self-reflect.
Yeah. I mean, if that's another red flag, if I always think it's always about the other person, and I have many times thought it was about the other person, and maybe it is about the other, maybe I'm working for a jerk, or my neighbor is a jerk, or my neighbors are not jerks. So anyway, but
Shout out to the neighbors.
I love my neighbors. But there's something, if I back it up, like when years that were difficult situations at work, and many, 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 many years ago, I worked with somebody, and she went to the principal about me. Lovely, lovely, lovely lady. We were very different. I was 22 and she was like 55, and about my behavior. And we had a meeting, and I have to give the principal credit, and him bringing us together and saying, you two need to talk it out. And I was a young teacher. I think it was my first or second year. And luckily, I had a mentor who like brought it out. Like it was somewhat about me. Like I was just telling. And she was just blocking, 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 blocking. Anyway, but it took me quite the full year to realize, like, who do I want to be in this? You know?
The relationship. Who do you want to be in the relationship? Okay.
Right. But anyway, I digressed a little bit from what you were talking about.
No, that's great. No, so hold on to that because that's kind of interesting too. So like I call it the observer. And sometimes I just want to be the observer in the relationship
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
moment, right? Each moment's different. But I like the concept of, you got your feedback, you accepted the feedback, and then you decided to listen and be the observer for that other person at that moment to hear them out. And I think we spend so much time worried about, okay, well, the other person did not react or the other person didn't change the way I thought they would change.
Mm.
I think I think that's another internal feeling, like the expectations that others will behave the way we want them to, because we've that's that doesn't always happen. And we also have to have grace and love, or how my coach would say, send them meta, because they are who they are, and they are where they're at. And as human to human, our job is to just love each other. So if you're, I'm gonna use Delpha words, if you're in a hot mess, the hot mess is not mine. I'm changing my behavior, because it's both about me caring for you, but also caring for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can choose to change your behavior if you want, and that's your choice. But I'm not going to get hung up on the choices that you made. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Cool. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, work is a whole different animal, right, than outside of work relationships, because there is hierarchy. So,
this is our first disagree. Oh my gosh, we haven't had a disagree on the podcast.
Oh, good. Okay, tell me.
Okay, so I disagree.
All right, tell me.
I think relationships are relationships, human behavior is human behavior, whether it's at work or not, and yes, there are hierarchies at work, but I'm going to quote myself. I said this to my boss yesterday. I don't worry about people's positions, because we're all human. And our behavior is based on our humanity, and what we perceive we have a right to or a right not to. And that may be driven by positional power or things like that. But really, it's a myth that people behave differently at work, my opinion. And listeners, you could tell me I'm totally wrong. This is a disagree moment for Naomi and I. But I think people at work are the same people at home. They just characterize it differently. And human relationships are human relationships. And I'll go further. This is actually, I use this technique. If you were a young teacher, again, I would actually give this advice to you. And whether you're a teacher, a student, as long as you're a human being, this works. Okay, it doesn't matter where you're at. If you guys have not read the Love Languages book, and I'll put a link to the book on our show notes here. It's a great book. It talks about how other people perceive and receive love. And understanding that it's written in a sense of like couples relationships. Understanding that helps you to build trust, build confidence in the relationship, build stability. It does all kinds of wonderful things. So
yes, I love that book. And isn't there a love languages at work?
There is a love languages at work, and that's real, because the same love languages that you use for your spouse, and the love languages that you know how you receive love, those are the same ones that you're going to use at work. And I'll give you an example. There was I used to work with this young lady. She's awesome. I love her to pieces. She was having such a hard time with her boss. And I'm gonna use all the trigger words. She is technically a millennial. Technically, like she displays all of the things of, I love me, I respect me, and he should respect me too. And I'm my own person, and he should respect me as my own person. And he is older.
Yeah.
His focus was on the way we all grew up at work way back in the day. Are you coming in early? Are you leaving late? Are you late? Are you sitting at your desk at your job? Are you socializing too much? Are you doing all the things? I don't think that makes you look like you're working. Well, she comes into my office, and we're having yet another bitch session about this boss. And I said, okay, stop. You know you have a boyfriend. You know his love language. Do you know your boss's love language? Have you paid attention to that? She's like, what? I'm like, don't segment. He's a human being, and he has a love language. You know what his love language is? It's acts of service. this whole, I want you to stay late and do more. And I want you to be humble and not just do the 8 to 5 or the 9 to 5 or whatever. I want you to give more because to me, that shows that you care about the work that you're doing. That's his love language. So maybe it's not about for you staying late, but in what ways can you change your framework and how you communicate with him and the behavior should display in front of him that support his love language.
Right. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, she started changing just a little bit, And then COVID happened. And you know what happened during COVID? We're all working from home, right? He can't see her, but now he can see all the output that she's delivering because he wasn't blocked. His vision wasn't blocked by her social butterfly behavior because she's awesome. The social butterfly, she's friends with everybody.
Yeah.
But he could see the output and she became, in his mind, a super rock star.
Right. Yeah. I love the love languages at work ideas. And I think every single employee and employer and supervisor should take advantage of that. And what amazing advice you gave. I want to go back to the statement that I said where, like there's a hierarchy. What I meant was, and maybe it's the wrong word and I don't want to use it. I've been retired from my teaching profession for a while now, 9 years, and into my life coaching world. But there is an expectation that you do your job, right?
Yeah.
I guess that expectation is true in, it's, there is the professional kind of. And I love it. I really appreciate that you brought in the love languages because, when you have a profession, a career, a job, there is that expectation. You have to complete certain things, but always, I totally agree with everything you said. That I bring myself in and my humanity, and I don't want to ever bring anyone except for who I am. And I said in another podcast that I didn't always do that. I wanted to please. I brought the teacher person. And part of that pleasing, I think, did not serve me well. And part of that pleasing really did serve me well because I wanted to get better and better and better at my craft and understand the science and do all that stuff, right? And part of it is, I think, when we go back to self-worth, you're worth so much more than you know. Of course, we want to be acknowledged for that worth. But when we're not acknowledged, that example you just gave is so perfect. Like, what is it in me that I can bring out? Like, do a little self-reflection. My boss is not acknowledging any of that in me. What can I do differently right now?
Yeah.
And maybe it won't make any difference, but maybe it will, right?
Maybe. And don't beat up yourself over
it.
Your self-worth is your self-worth. It's yours. And therefore, you own it. If you choose to give powers to others so that they control it, maybe you want to think about that again. Maybe you want to go back to your self-worth and how you are valuing yourself. And I'll go back to the beginning of this, Miss Mumford, shout out again. This
Emma Mumford.
Emma Mumford, man, rocking it. Self-care, self-worth, self-love, and then self-worth. That's brilliant. So you don't care for yourself, you're not going to build self-worth. If you don't show yourself self-love, you're not going to build self-worth. None of that has to do with anybody else but you.
Right. Those are definitely the three pieces. I love how she divides that up. I don't know. I think just reminding me, myself, you, everybody, sometimes we forget our self-worth. We just need to tap back into it. We need to just activate it and think about what are your, triggers isn't the right word. What are your like yellow flashing lights? Like, caution. I think I've forgotten some of my self-worth. One of them is definitely boundaries. Another one is not overreacting, reacting rather than responding, right? I'm reacting like, ooh, I felt, because sometimes stuff stings, right? Like, ooh, you
Yes.
said that? You think that? You told me that? That's how you're talking to me? Like, okay, step back for a minute into my self-worth. What is my highest? Well, this is a whole other million podcasts, but you have to know your core values too. And then go back into your core. What is your, I work with somebody who always says, my highest core value is, and for her, it's communication. And for me, it's connection. My highest core value that is in my soul DNA. And there's no better or worse or right or wrong, but I need to step back into like, I'm getting triggered here. Like I want to push back or, what is my highest core value? If my highest core value is connection and we are not connecting, what can I bring? How can I bring my highest core value in? Now I feel worthy, whatever happens. And maybe I leave this relationship or this job or whatever, but I step back into my, like you said, with the other person, into my self-worth. Okay. I have no regrets about what I said, what I did, how I feel, how I'm acting. I just don't want to be in this situation anymore.
Yeah.
No regrets, though.
And you value yourself. And
Yeah.
honestly, that's a whole nother topic of when you leave and having all the breakup feelings, whether it's a relationship or work or whatever. I was again talking to that same friend, and we go back and forth about whether she's going to stay at the job or leave the job. And I just reminded her that the day she decides to exit, if she decides to exit, it's gonna feel like divorce.
It's going to be hard.
It's gonna be hard. It's not gonna be easy because we are human, and work is about relationships. And you build a community and a family that you know you're going to walk away from, and that hurts so much. And it's such a awful thing. But to your point, Naomi, if we take a moment and stop and really consider, are my values aligned with this situation? Am I able to represent my values in this situation? If the answer is no, then it is about self-care, which is walking away. That's the physical. Self-love, telling yourself it's okay because you're worth it, and then setting your self-worth. Love it. Love it. So with that, we are going to close this podcast because we had a disagree and then we came back to agree and we talked about a lot of topics. So for our listeners out there, keep sending us your suggestions. I think we're going to talk about core values next, Naomi, because we now touched core values a couple of times, but we haven't explained what are core values versus not core values. So you're probably going to have the mic most of the time on the next one to kind of walk people through what is a core value versus not.
My favorite thing to talk about. Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one. Please give us
Bye.
Well, don't say bye yet. We're doing the closing. We're doing the closing. That's all right. So we're still practicing our actual thing capabilities. So give us a follow. If you don't want to give us a follow, that's fine. But share this with somebody that would be interested. We appreciate you. We care about you, and we'll see you later. Now, Naomi, say bye.
Bye. See you next time.
See ya. Bye.